Who do we have on the line at 337-6163?
This is Larry Tobias.
Thanks, Larry.
We're about 1 o'clock. You guys got enough? You ready to start there in the room there?
Yep, we got a full house over here. So whenever you're ready, we can go ahead and go through the list. Here.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead. This is Jim Godfrey. This is the CAC meeting for October. Like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone, both in person and remotely. I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the International Balloon Fest. Apologize for being remote, but we work as volunteers down here along with 11 other couples of my motorhome group. So a great event. And if you hadn't ever been, it's worth coming. So just go ahead and check and make sure we've got everyone here. And Rick, verify please that who the alternates can vote.
All right. So instead of going down the line of everybody, we'll just name off those we know that are absent today because we have quite a large group. So we don't see Mr. Scott Barnhart, Miss Karen Aspelin, Miss Cindy Tompkins, Mr. Gene Bray, Mr. Carlos Perez, Mr. David Chestnut, which I believe is not here anymore.
How about Larry Tobias?
Larry is on the line with
Okay.
us. He's on Zoom. Other than that, we have everybody else here. So I'll let Rick.
All alternates can vote.
All
So with-
alternates vote.
Yep. So with that, just remember to state your name when making a motion. Those of you out there in Zoom, you can use the raise your hand feature. You can wave your real hands around if you need to. Make sure to mute yourself when you are not speaking so that we don't get your background noise. And then those of you here in the room, when you need to speak, make sure you turn your microphone on. It'll light up red next to the puff here. And to do that, it's the face with the squiggle lines coming off of it. And that way everyone can hear you in the room and in the Zoom. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'd
This is
like
Larry
to.
Tobias. I second it.
Okay, thank you. I guess I should have. Rick, where's? Oh, I guess I should have mentioned that item 8B is the update on the federal infrastructure funding. There's been no movement in Congress on that. So with everyone's, if the folks that made the motion to approve and second the motion, I should have mentioned that we're going to strike that event 8B. So are you still okay with approving the agenda as modified?
Yes.
This is Larry Tobias, yes.
And the second, it's all good? Great. Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Okay, motion for the agenda carries. Thank you. Item number 3, public comment for items not on the agenda. Anyone in the committee have any comments that they'd like to make? All right, hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that I can't see that would like to make any comments?
No audience comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Item number 4, approval of minutes from September meeting. I hear a motion to that effect.
I so move, Tom.
Second, thank you,
Jim
Tom.
Moore.
Thank you, Jim. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries for approval of the minutes. Bev, financial reports.
Good afternoon, members of the CAC. So for July, we received 13.1 million, which was 500,000 over budget or 4%. This is the new budget, the amended budget amendment number 2. And so we are ahead of amendment number 2 so far by 5,128,000. Then on page 2, we were ahead of last July by 1,862,000 or 16.6%, which is a little less than the prior, well, quite a bit less than March, April, May, and June. So this kind of tells us a little bit more because our budgets were low to begin with. So I don't know, the stimulus for the additional unemployment and so on. What month did that end? August? Labor Day weekend? Okay.
I have a question. Is the monthly budget for July reflecting the revised budget that we came up with? That's why there's a jump in what our expectations were?
The monthly budget is the revised amendment number 2. I'm not sure I'm answering your.
Because I noticed that we go up by $500,000 in expected in budget number between June and July.
Okay. So what I do is restate the budget for the whole year when we add revenue to the budget. The budget, not the actual, because it's based on the prior year's percentage of actual. So you take the total actual, and then each month from the prior year has a percentage of the total. And then I kind of redo it as if we had that budget for the whole year. Okay,
Bev,
so
this-
then, are there any
Jim,
questions on the other
I've got a
pages?
question.
Anything else?
I've got a question. The downward trend in revenue kind of seems to match some of the news reports on housing starts and the economy slowing down a little bit after some of the stimulus money has beginning to run out or anything. Do you see this? The trend is actually starts going down until the fall around Christmas and that kind of stuff. But do you kind of see this as a continuing trend following the other years or anything like that?
Yeah, I would think that we'll be slowing down a little in the next few months, and then a lot of times December is really good. November and December. It's a little different now though, because what had happened for years is we weren't collecting on internet sales. And so we saw a trend that the holidays weren't very good. compared to prior years for a while, a number of years. And now we've got the opposite of that going on. So I'm not sure we're going to see that as much this year, that impact. There'll be other impacts like the unemployment, additional unemployment ending and things like that. I don't know what the impact of the lack of labor, the labor shortage is going to be, because it's very pronounced in restaurants and other places. And, will people just stop going out and eating as much as they were right after COVID, right after they thought COVID was under control? I don't know. If you've been out,
Okay,
who wants
thank
to
you.
wait an hour to just get started. So I don't know.
Okay, thanks for that insight.
Anybody else?
Any,
Okay, thank you.
all right, thanks, Bev. So let's go to item number 6, 2021 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts, the city of Colorado Springs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gail Sturdivant, City Engineer and Deputy Public Works Director for the City of Colorado Springs. We are bringing 7 contracts forward for the CAC's consideration, and then I will be mentioning another project we'd be asking for your support or for the board support for a letter of support towards the end. So as I kick off, the first contract is the final closeout change order for quantity reconciliation for the Barnes Road project. There is an additional requirement for $45,814.77 to go to Pyramid Construction as we finalize those items. Overall, even though this is a small increase in the construction contract, we anticipate about a $200,000 savings for the overall budget. So sometime in the not too distant future, you will see a line item transfer out of those monies as we close it out. We like to leave some budget in there through the warranty period in case there's additional restoration or things that come up. But anyway, that project's wrapped up nicely. And if you want to see a drone image of a finished product, it is available in your packet. The city's second contract is for the El Paso Bridge over Fountain Creek tributary. This is our second to last A-list project to get started. This is a new contract that would go to Alfred Benish and Company to do the design of that replacement bridge, and that is in the amount of $203,195.33. Third contract is actually a contract for us sort of funding to have the BNSF third-party reviewers go ahead and review the engineering plans for the UPR mainline and siding bridge over, the UPR mainline over Nevada and Tejon bridges. And that is in the amount of $138,000. And that goes to between the city and BNSF.
Could I ask a question?
Certainly.
Does that seem expensive? For just a review of plans, I don't quite understand what you're getting.
It is on the higher side of what you would think from a Gedesman, but fairly consistent with what we see for deposits, because they have us authorize the funds up front for anything they could have over this. And this is anticipated to cover, really a 2 to 3 year process. And then once it closes out, then we typically have funds returned back from those. But
Yeah, Reb beat me to it. This is what I would consider a pretty good salary for an annual salary for an engineer, for them just to review stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
we don't necessarily disagree. Unfortunately, we do not get a lot of negotiating power on these particular efforts. The railroad, with their consultants that they use for these reviews, they set the limit of what they anticipate, and it is on the high side of what they anticipate for the cost of those reviews over the life cycle of what they anticipate for the project development.
Gail.
Yes, sir.
So the bridge is owned by Union Pacific.
That's
Yes.
the other question.
The plans are being read by Burlington Northern.
Yes and no. So the UP rail line is owned by, the rail line over these two bridges is owned by UP, one of the rail lines. There's actually a second rail line over both these bridges that it's owned by BNSF. Those two railroads have an agreement in place where BNSF is the operating or controlling railroad of the track through this stretch. One, and then these railroads, both of them use the same third-party consultant to do the reviews on their behalf. In this case, they typically use Rail Pro for both railroads. It's the same reviewers. There's been some discussion with the PUC with the oversight of the railroads that they have one lead railroad and they can rely on the other rely on the review to cover both railroads' interests.
With the
Um,
fact that we're willing to spend money to pay and fix their bridge.
I would be happy to discuss the ownership of those bridges after the meeting if you would like to in more detail.
I have a question. What happens if the bridges fail? So we
So-
as the city have to find a way around.
Well, so then I will go ahead and address. So the bridges are actually there for the benefit of the city. They aren't there for the benefit of the railroad. The railroad happened to have the rail lines in place before the city had a need to have those streets put in place. You got to remember Nevada was an old state highway. So it was when the old department, I think it was Department of Roads is what it was called before it was CDOT. So it went from Department of Roads to CDOT and then that was transferred over to the city. So that's how we own that particular bridge. And then when Tejon Street went through, there was an agreement in place between UP and the city that we have basically a license to have that bridge in place. You have to with any rail structure, yes.
Yeah, thanks for covering that, Gail, especially for some of our newer members. I remember that discussion in the past that of that weird arrangement. And seems there was also something to the effect that if they were to replace them, they would do it and maybe not consider the realignment that we want. But that the need to replace them with wider, bigger stuff is driven by the requirements of the city, not the railroad.
That is correct. The longer bridges, yes, they're the requirement of the city, not necessarily the railroad.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? This is a lot. Yes, go ahead, Rick.
I'm probably out of place in saying this, but since the railroads, excuse me a sec. Since the railroads were here first, before any roads or streets crossing under over them, it's the expense of the city or the county that wants to cross the railroad to bear all the expense of going over or under in perpetuity. Is that a fair statement?
It is very accurate. And I will mention one other question. I think somebody happened, what happened if the bridge were to fail? And I mean, I think it's not a secret that the Tejon Bridge is not in great shape and has had some pretty significant structural issues that if it were to fail, that BNSF would likely come up and put some bridge up in place where it's at right now and not give us the opportunity to make any changements either in the bridge configuration or the realignment of the track through South Downtown Colorado Springs.
Would they do that?
Yes, I have been in discussions where they said they would do that.
What? I'm well aware of Tejon Bridge. The only reason I ask is they're using us as a facilitator of replacement of their bridge. Yes, we have a new design, as Tom pointed out, and I guess Rick did. Literally, literally, I just wondered what happens to Union Pacific as a principal owner, I guess. Who's going to pay?
You gotta remember, the city owns the bridge for our benefit. Right?
But so we decide not to replace it. Are they just going to, the train's gone? Doesn't,
We owe them, we would have, well, we don't necessarily have to replace the bridge, but we would owe them the embankment to keep the track in that area. The track has precedent over the streets.
so they don't have, I guess what I'm saying is they don't have to put a bridge that spans more than, for the sake of the discussion, 20 feet, or if any. Why can't they just put it on an embankment?
Well, I mean, that is an option, right? You could consider it. They would go and put it in at least to the length, or to the best of their ability, the length that it exists today. They would not lengthen it to provide a better street section, and I say better because we want a more complete street section underneath there in the future.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Rev, let me take a stab at it. The only other option, I think, for the city, and again, I'm just working off of many years of observing things from a distance, is that if the city could fill in under the bridge to the specs of the railroad in order to keep the railroad operating, but then not have a road that goes under the bridge. It wouldn't be a bridge anymore. It would just be an embankment that's filled in, probably all with concrete, or, you know, with whatever that's strong enough for the railroad to go over it. But then that's the other option for the city, is fill in and you don't have a street going under it.
I'd be happy to entertain further discussion after the meeting if you would like to pontificate about this. I will mention, I have met in person with UP and several video calls with BNSF. You know, the city is pursuing, and you will hear this next month, a CRISI grant application to formalize the preliminary engineering and start putting applying a NEPA to this area so we can be eligible for future federal funding for these bridge replacements. So we're going to be leveraging the remaining funds and some emergency bridge funds likely to help get this in place so we can be eligible for some other funding opportunities in the future. All right, I'm going to move on to contract 4, and if we need to circle back at this, I'd be happy to at the end. The city's 4th contract is for on-call roadway drainage construction contracts. We have 15 contractors that we're pre-qualifying and putting task orders in place. There are currently $0 assigned with these task orders. If they are issued, they could be issued in the amount of up to $200,000 per task order, with a limit of $2 million per construction contractor. These contracts will only be issued with funds that are appropriated and available for use as needed to support roadway drainage projects. Contract number 5 is, I know we're getting close to getting that Black Forest Road widening construction going, and we're in the end stages of property negotiations. One of these particular properties at 6770 Foxtrot Lane has a septic system that needs to be relocated in advance of the project starting for utility relocations and the widening of the road. So to get that done, we went through and did an invitation for bid, and we selected Rhino Rock Designs in the amount of $39,338. Contract number 6 is still for Black Forest Road. It's for change order number 9. It's for property legal descriptions and right-of-way transfer associated with the project. And that would be in the amount of $33,731 and a change order for AECom. The city's 7th contract is for North El Paso Street damage assessment. So I think you may have all heard about this in the news. On August 26th, we actually had a oversized vehicle strike that bridge on El Paso Street that goes over Platte Avenue. It did significant damage to many of those members, and we had to have some immediate structural assessment done in place and some immediate remediation work just to make sure that bridge was not going to cause damage so we could open Platte Avenue back up. El Paso Street is still closed and will remain closed until we come up with the final solution and assessment. In addition to having this emergency assessment with a structural engineer, we want to continue their efforts and have them help us with the design efforts and recommendations to move forward. And we will be taking a look at this in conjunction with the recommendations of the Platte Avenue corridor study. And that is in the amount of $33,000. Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is Tony Joya. Since it was caused by an accident, the damage was caused by an accident, how much of this is going to be covered by like various insurance policies, whether it be ours or theirs?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually meant to add that on. I appreciate that question. So this cost and any other costs we incur, including the contract we had on site helping us with the damage and removing the dangling pieces from the bridge. That is all going to be put in as part of the city's insurance claim against the driver's insurance company. So we will try to recover as much and hopefully all the funds that we expend on this activity. With that, those are the city's 7 contracts. I will be asking for a CAC's recommendation here in just a moment. I do want to mention one other item that's floating around out there that we will be discussing with the PPRTA board next week. The city is pursuing a grant that's put out really through CDOT and their bridge program under their special highway committee, and it's administered through the Colorado Municipal League, and it's for off-system bridges. The city is going to be pursuing a grant for the Water Street Bridge over Camp Creek. So we'll be putting that together in the process of drafting a letter to bring forth to the PPRTA board for their consideration and support to go along with our packet. But I want to make sure you were aware of it. I apologize for not having a draft, but this has really kind of come up and with the board meeting and these grant deadlines, sometimes it's hard to get those sequenced. So I apologize for that. But anyway, with those, I'd be happy to answer questions on that. Yes.
Gail, I'm a little confused. This is a city issue. Why is this before PPRTA and just not being dealt with by the city of Colorado Springs? Why is it coming to us?
Which thing are you asking, Jen? I apologize.
The tractor trailer accident. Number
All right.
7.
So twofold in this particular case, with the issues with that bridge, let me flip back over to those, please. We are using PPRTA maintenance dollars for that particular activity because we have to pay upfront for those services. And within our maintenance funds, we have those allocated mostly for our operations and maintenance of our roadways, but we do have bridge funds associated with that. And that is the funding source that we're using for this contract. Yes, yes. Oh, and that is correct. And so, once the insurance claim is settled, and PPRTA would be paid back those funds for additional use. It's really just advancing funds that keep that work moving forward.
Why not a clarification? When I say that, you have emergency bridge funds available, and they're usually capital. And
We have emergency bridge funds that are capital. Yes, we also have maintenance funds that are associated with bridge maintenance. And that is a bridge that was already under maintenance anyway. In fact, we were able, thankfully, we had a contractor already engaged for maintenance on that bridge, and they were the ones able to mobilize immediately when we had the strike to come and pull it down. And if you've ever been underneath that bridge, it had plywood underneath it because there was concerns about concrete falling off the bottom of the deck. Anyway, it was very interesting. It was quite a sight, but anyway. Any other questions? That is correct. So the city is asking for CAC support to move forward with the 7 contracts as I presented and I put in your packet. And then also concurrence to have the board provide a letter of support for the bridge grant we are going to be seeking for the Water Street Bridge over Camp Creek.
Any other questions?
yeah, where's Camp Creek?
Camp Creek, it really starts just on the north side of Garden of the Gods Road and really parallels
Okay.
30th, 31st Street, yeah. Okay. And there's a map provided in your packet.
We good? Can we make a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I was going to say, if all the questions are finished, so I have a motion to make a recommendation to approve the city's request.
This is
So
red.
Jim Moore.
We have a motion. For the second,
I have I move approval of the city's 7 contracts and the recommendation of off-street bridge projects or off-system bridge projects, however Gail wants it or worded.
Jim, are you willing to second that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Reb and a second by Jim Moore. Any further discussion for Gail? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, recommendation for approval carries. Thank you. All right, item 6B, El Paso County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. This is Jennifer Irving, County Engineer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, folks, I'm sorry I was not able to be there with you in person today. And I'm not turning my video on because I have terrible internet access, but I wanted to let you know I do appreciate all the service that the CAC does. We have one contract for your consideration today. Our Highway 105 project spans 5 miles, and we have done preliminary engineering on that entire section. And we also are in final acquisition for Section A, which you'll see in your packet. We do have some additional costs for Section A, which includes some final design and some utility coordination that we need to add funding for, and for property acquisition requirements, including some coordination with the Monument Academy property to accommodate the project. In addition to that, this contract amendment also includes the next phase of engineering final design for that section, which we're calling Project B, and includes that final design from where we're leaving off with A at Lake Woodmore Drive and extending that final design to Martingale Road. This section has a significant amount of properties, and as such, we have included in that budget adequate funding to be able to look at property acquisition services for those properties as well. So we are asking for your recommendation to contract amendment for Highway 105 to add $2.1 million for the supplemental design on Project A, and then for final design on Project B. Happy to answer any questions.
Tom? Jennifer, this is Tom. So as I read this, with this, we will have appropriated 5.4 million and we haven't turned our first shovel of dirt.
Yep, that's correct, sir. But what I don't want to do, we're continuing on with Project A, and we are working very hard with the school and the church. We do have final design on that project. And we need to go ahead and move forward on finishing up any property acquisition on that. And then making sure that we're looking forward to Project B and getting that underway. I don't want to wait, to begin design on the next phase of the project. And we're running that in parallel.
Yeah. You say Project A is basically final design now?
Yes, sir.
Is there a way to share that design with the public?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are at the last Highway Advisory Commission. I was asked for an update on that project. I will be delivering an update on that project to the Highway Advisory Commission at our next meeting. And then also, we're happy to work on if there's anybody specifically that you know of who wants to meet with us, happy to do that, and try and make sure that we update our website to add some additional information on that.
Yeah, the website, I checked this morning and it still shows that it was, this Project A was started in 2019 and finished in 2020. So it's not very accurate at this point.
Yep. As you are aware, and just so that everybody's on the same page, we have been dealing with some very significant issues as far as access and addressing access with both the church and the school, and have been working through that process. And I anticipate that we'll be following up here pretty quickly, hopefully with being able to move forward on those property acquisitions.
Jennifer, I understand that, and I know that the team is working hard on it. I guess my concern is the communication side of it right now.
Absolutely. I
It's not, we're
that.
just not informing anybody what's going on.
Okay. I hear that. We'll get that addressed.
All right, thank you.
Jennifer, the design for the so-called from near the school to 83, this amount of money mainly for that to do final design. When will that final design be finished?
I'll have to check back with you and get an update for that. I don't have that with me. I'm out of the office right now, and I'm sorry about that.
No problem. My concern is, I guess, there always seem to be things that come up for any highway project. And I'm just concerned, as always, that final construction will be on schedule within this 10-year period to finish 105. And so that's why I asked that question. And I look forward to the meeting of the HAC where you're going to present some fair amount of detail, I think, on 105. And I'm also going to be interested at that meeting, the details on how you're handling that access or lack of access to the school in the A part. Okay?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Jim. Rick, chime in here if I'm wrong. Just want to clarify a comment that Richard made. We don't have to have completed the construction of the project by the 10-year period. It just has to be funded. Am I correct with that?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Jennifer.
Before you moved, before anybody can move to the B, all the A's have to be completely funded. And staff is working on a definition for that to come to the CAC board probably next month.
But that's not complete constructed, just completely funded.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Just wanted to clarify that. Jennifer, I've got a question. If I'm not mistaken, right there at Woodmore Lakes Road, where A ends and B starts, don't you come up, if you're coming south on Woodmore as you approach 105, isn't there a slight incline right before you get to 105? And then if you're look east, it's a almost a blind or it's a restricted view entrance at that intersection there. If you're coming off of Woodmore onto 105, is part of the design and A and B or in to there?
We are changing the grade at that intersection. That intersection has a significant grade. It will never be flat, but part of the improvements will be to address that as best as possible within a reasonable cost.
Understand. Okay, thank you.
Jennifer.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Red.
Jennifer, the GAP project and the widening of the bridge over I-25, have any of those costs been associated with the GAP and the bridge? Are those costs going to quote that project as opposed to the work that was listed originally as A and B in the original phase 2 or PPRTA 2.
Reb, are you referring to the bridge at County Line?
Yeah, the County Line Bridge. That's 105.
Uh,
Isn't it? No, am I wrong?
It's 105.
No, County Line is at County
No.
Line. Has nothing to do with Highway 105.
Yeah, I just don't know 105. I'm sorry. That's my mistake.
Yeah, okay.
Jim, I'm ready to move for approval.
Go ahead. I was waiting just.
All right, I move for
Start to answer.
approval of
Okay.
Jennifer's request.
Second, Richard.
That was
Who was the first? motion?
Second,
Tom Beers.
Tom, thank
any
you.
further discussion?
Jim, I don't know whether
Any
you,
other discussion for Jim?
Jim, I don't know whether you've heard, but Tom.
Go ahead, Rep. What were you saying? Yes, go ahead.
Tom Beerspa made a motion for approval and it was seconded by Richard Robertson. I don't know whether you can't see.
Richard
it.
seconded.
Richard Robertson seconded. He's not here.
Yes, I heard that. Yes. Okay, if no further discussion, all those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate the committee's positive recommendation.
I've got some audio. I've got a little bit of latency in the audio, so if, correct me if you can't hear me for some reason. Okay, moving on to 7A, member governments and other reports, transit services.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit with your monthly transit report. So we're reporting on August of 2021 for our services. For our local fixed route services, we provided nearly 185,000 one-way trips. Service ran 31 out of 31 days. Due to some continued operator shortages, we are still operating without several routes, and we've decreased frequency on other routes to keep some service out there. But we are showing an increase of a little over 20% from August of 2020 when we were in the middle of COVID. But we're still down 40% from August.
Good afternoon, this is Kevin.
So moving down to our ADA powered transit services, we provided about 8,500 passenger trips in August of 2021. That's an increase of 63% from August of 2020, but still down about 35% from August of 2019. For our specialized paratransit taxi choice option service, we just restarted that back in March of this year. So it is still slowly increasing, but we provided 43 rides in August. And that's down quite a bit, 93% from August of 2019. For our Vanpool services, we operated 8 vans in August of this year. 12 routes have been currently suspended due to teleworking and other needs drawing away from the usage of our van pools. And 2 routes have been permanently discontinued at this time. But there were 40 active riders making about 880 trips in August of this year. That's 33% up from August of 2020, but still 77% down from August of 2019. That's it for this report. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Brian? Brian, somebody hadn't asked this question. I'm surprised Hoover or somebody's there or not, but what about the transfer terminal? Any progress on that?
No, but I appreciate the questions. I believe one of these months I'll be able to give a really good answer that you'll all be satisfied with. But it is there are still things happening. That's the good news. It is still moving forward, but it's kind of negotiations between the property owner and the city, and terms and agreements and all of that for usage of the property. So I would like to say it's getting a little bit closer. I think every day we're getting a little bit closer, but yeah, hopefully you'll keep asking me every month and I'll be able to give you a good answer. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Brian? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7B, City of Colorado Springs change order and property acquisition report. That's an information only report. Anybody got any questions on that?
Mr. Chair, this is Gail Sturdivant. I'd like to make one correction to the bottom of the report.
Okay.
The last line item under the task order log for Granite Engineering, that should be $3,672 as opposed to $2,672. Otherwise,
Okay, thank you. Any questions on El Paso County, item 7C, monthly change order and property acquisition report? All right, hearing none. Item 8, 8A, report of recent board actions. That memo is in your packet. I'll just say that the discussion continues on the matrix. Thanks to the staff, Gail, and in the right direction. But is there any questions from members of the CAC on the recent board actions?
This is Rick. One of the other highlights in there is in item number 4, that the board selected a revenue estimate for next year for FY22 of 138 million.
Yes, thank you. Okay, item 8B, update on the federal. We scratched that one, so thank you for, we'll keep that on the radar, and as progresses through Congress, the distribution down to the states and into CDOT. For clarity, it really doesn't, that we know of, impact anything in RTA. But I've mentioned I am interested that whether or not that funding would impact anything on our list. Are we going to get federal funding for something that would come off of our list, or allow us to move something up? So that's of interest. The other piece is just because of what we do in the CAC and the RTA. I think this is good for us to be aware of what's happening and what's going on, so that when our constituents ask questions, we can clarify whether this is a city project or a federally funded project or an RTA project. So we'll keep monitoring that, and we'll update everyone as we get information. Engineering cost estimates for RTA 3 capital projects. Who's going to lead that one?
This is Rick, I can start. Several years ago, the board approved the concept of setting aside unused admin funds into an account or a reserve or a pool to build that up so that it could be used for cost estimating purposes for future PPRTA 3 capital projects. And that reserve account now has over $1 million in it. And the PPRTA attorney told the board that the only way that we can use admin funds is for the contracts with consulting engineers to do the cost estimating would have to be by the PPRTA as opposed to member government, although member governments could be highly involved in the entire process, member government staffs particularly. But the PPRTA would have to be the contracting owner with the consulting firms. So the process that's been proposed by city staff and we've county staff may yet also propose a similar process, but I think Jennifer Irvin is considering what she wants to do. But Gail Sturvin has proposed the process that I put in the memo. City staff would select the engineering firms to recommend to the PPRTA. Then the city staff would select via negotiation which firms would conduct the cost estimating and what the fees would be, which is similar to the process the city currently uses with its PPRTA approved on-call engineering firms. And then there'd be a scope of work. The consulting firms would be asked to do cost estimates on the future PPRTA 3 capital projects on a 0 to 2% design parameter, with the cost estimate expect to be in a range of minus 50% to a plus 100%, and use a 3% annual inflation rate from late 21 or early 22 until 2025. Firms would provide monthly progress reports with their invoices, which would be reviewed by city staff and recommended to the PPRTA, and then the PPRTA would pay those invoices. Cost estimates would be expected to be delivered to the city and the PPRTA by April of 22. So as I say, the board approved the concept several years ago, but in developing the details of the process, I thought it'd be best to confirm with CAC and the board the process and the level of expenditure. So with that, I'll open it, Jim, back to you as chair to entertain the discussion.
Mr. Chair, this is Tony Joy. I have a question on that.
Go ahead, Tony.
It seems like a very wide range from half to double on an estimate of cost. If it's going to be, I mean, if we're just kind of throwing darts at a board, is it worth spending $1 million to do that?
Funny you should ask.
I will yield to Gail.
So
as the process was recommended to me by Gail.
let me just add to that, if I will, and then we'll let Gail respond to both. I'm not the engineer in the room, but there are several. And to me, this sounded like a good concept when they talked about it, of trying to confirm cost estimates, that they were accurate and this, that, and another. And I don't believe the discussion was at the time to actually build the cost estimates. They were confirming cost estimates. And so to spend $728,000 on a 0 to 2% design that, in my opinion, will change from that estimate, I just don't see the value in spending $728,000 for what it amounts to a back of the envelope cost estimate that's going to change before you get to final design. And we're not verifying anything. We are now building those cost estimates. And so to me, this is not the concept that was approved. And I'm just wondering why the current existing contractors that are on staff with the member governments couldn't bill these initial costs versus us taking money out of this admin, back in capital maintenance and transit, but go back to the fully distributed. And so I think that the detail become more
Jim, turn your video off so we
clear,
can hear the audio.
in my mind. But again, I 0 to 2% is going to change by the, okay, let me hold on. I'll turn the video off. Is that any better? So I'm just concerned that we're, one, we're not doing what we said we were going to do, and two, we're spending a lot of money for a 2%, up to a 2% design. To me, I'm not sure that it's worth it. I'll let Gail step in and address Tony's and mine, things are related.
Gail Servant, I'm going to address Tony's first because I think that's really the easiest and well-documented response. So, and I put this actually in a discussion in the PPRTA 3 matrix memo as well. Oh, sorry, in the PPRTA 3 matrix memo as well. But if you go and look at established processes and my preferred one and how we've really based the city scope as we put this together is the Associated Advancement of Cost Engineering. And it's an international, or it's AACE, it's an international firm that actually establishes the process and procedures for establishing construction cost estimates. And it goes for 5 different levels. As you go through and look at it, and class 5 as being the least accurate, and that's what we really do and what is appropriate for strategic planning. One of the things in the scope that I put together, and what I really want to look at is to make sure that when these projects are being estimated, that we're looking at everything that's really going to be included or impact the scope of the project. And I'm going to pick on Black Forest Road for just a moment here. You know, that's a project you've seen some huge cost increases on. And when it was originally estimated, you know, it was probably, well, I'm going to take a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road. Well, the reality is it's a 4-lane road with turn lanes, and you have to have shoulder, and you've got sidewalk, and now you've got new stormwater regulations and all these things. And just 2 of those small ads, it's a $4 million ad in and of itself. So I want to make sure the scope's validated based on the best information that we have now. And then that's used to develop a cost estimate just for construction to focus on first, knowing everything that's in there. And then we take a look at the risk associated with the project. And then we can decide what the contingency level needs to be added to that. Also, that's just the construction cost estimate. What the city is doing further, we actually are taking that construction cost estimate and converting it into a total project cost as well. So you're picking up the design engineering, you're picking up that now we've got the new and more stringent subsurface utility investigation, you know, construction management, all those different things, and right-of-way acquisition, right? That we're building those up front because those really weren't considered early on. And then the third thing I'm doing is taking a look at those and making sure the right level of escalation is really planned throughout the life cycle of projects. So, you know, if I were to go and do an estimates today, they're really based on $21 based on the current estimates. You know, we're not even going to start this till 25, and I'm looking at projects in 34. So I'm going to be picking a median year to make sure we're doing those. But anyway, even with all that planning and the due diligence, doing as best as we can with the information we know today, that if you go and look at the 80% level of confidence in the work that you performed, your range can still be in that -50 to +100%. And it's pretty well documented, any kind of cost estimating. And I know that's really hard to swallow, but unfortunately, I mean, that's where you are unless you're going through and really start a higher level of due diligence than what I described for you. So I apologize. So I hope that it may not be what you've done. And when you go advance from class 5, again, being the lowest class to class 1, you hope to be within that 5% level when you get to class 1. And those ranges, if you go and look at the guidance, it's between 5 and 15%. And when it's done well, I mean, that is what we typically see. And that's one of the reasons when I bring construction costs that have been gone through a hard bid, and I know what the engineer's estimate and the level of accuracy is, I always like to look to see where everyone is in that percentage base to kind of see what that band is and the level of accuracy. So I hope, again, it may not be the answer you wanted to hear, Tony, but I hopefully I'm addressing your question. And then Jim, I think what you're really asking is a little bit different question. I don't know that I'm the best one to answer, but I know it sounds like you're concerned with expending the funds, the admin funds for this particular purpose. And I understand your concern. It is a large sum of money. The intent is really, my understanding from the board when I first got here, and I think Rick, you may want to elaborate on it, was to have a better idea up front what our costs are going to be. So when we go to do that overall planning or programming through the 10-year cycle for the PPRTA authorization, the comfort level the board's going to have and what they can take on the ballot, it's that we really are going to be able to complete that A-list project and then have an opportunity to advance to the B-list. And, here we are with some larger projects and PPRTA with some larger projects and some cost increase. And we're going to still be doing construction after year 10, which is fine and allowable as we discussed earlier. But if you wanted to start advancing to the B-list, those opportunities really aren't there because we're having to fully fund everything. So that's the best I think I can do with the response right now, Jim. I think the rest may be some board direction background that maybe Rick might want to answer if you have a further question.
But Gail, the question would be is that in a normal process prior to the approval of this concept, the cost of obtaining those initial designs came out of the member government's capital line, and it wasn't additive to the funding distributed to the member governments. And for those member governments that don't have a large pool of money that may not use this, this is giving some member governments additional money. And although the amounts are small for the smaller members, it's a small dollar amount. I'm just concerned about the process. What are we going to gain spending this money to be able to know where to draw a line between the A and the B list? And that's kind of where my concern is coming from. And I can address it with the board.
Yeah.
I realize that's putting you on the spot, and I
Right.
apologize for not.
No, I'm just trying
not
to,
pre-discussing.
yes, I apologize, Jim. I'm just trying to respond. I think I added to that as best I could previously, but I'll restate it, with a better level of accuracy on the budget, it helps the board have a better understanding and level of confidence in what is being presented on an overall program. And when I say program, it's all those individual capital projects as a whole body, not just limited to the city, but even as with the county, that they have a better sense that what they're taking to the voters within the A and B list, so there's something that it can actually be accomplished in a more fruitful manner. And I think, Jim, that it'd be worthwhile for you to express your concern with the board, but I will go through and provide this exact same information at the time with the board as well when this topic comes up. But I think it would be good for us to have a better picture of what those total project costs are. And I'm a big proponent for strategic planning and for building a good capital program. So I feel like it's important to have a better set of data going in to make sure that we can fulfill with what we're promising to the voters.
Okay.
Jean Bray.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Gene.
Couple of items real quick. Your first comments are along the same recollections that I have, which were to ensure that the cost estimates on projects were good, complete, and accurate, not to do cost estimating before the fact. I don't know if there's other discussion or not, but if not, I'm willing to make a motion on this.
Before you do that, let me just see, is there anybody else that has anything to say on this? Before we have a-
Jim, this is Bev. My recollection was the board discussed this early on and asked our attorney, Jennifer Ivy, if it would be appropriate to use administrative funds for this. And she did think it was appropriate. So then that's how it started. That's how it became administrative funds. Now, they may have something in the next 10-year capital list as an item for future engineering or something. I don't know. We talked about it. I don't know where that ended up, but.
That got taken off the board at the last board meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So anyway, but since the attorney thought that this was an appropriate place for it, then that's kind of where we're at right now, since members of the board want to do this, so.
Jim, I have another question. And
Okay.
it goes
Go
to
ahead, Red.
line 3, and you refer to a range of -50% to +100. Where do you get a negative percentage? How do you get it? You start from a negative number? For the sake of discussion.
Yeah, right, yeah. As Tony just mentioned, if the estimate was $100,000, the negative 50% would, the actual cost would be 50,000. If it was plus 100, it would be 200,000.
But you didn't start with it. You had to have a starting point to get a negative percentage. I guess I have trouble with the math, but
It's
No.
just half, the consultant declares a number and the range is half of that number to double that number.
the consultants are after the fact that you get. I get the impression this is to get some idea of what projects to put on the A list and stay within your plans. You're starting, for the sake of discussion, the city has an idea that they want to do Black Forest Road. I'm just going to use her example. Black Forest Road, you started with an idea and all of a sudden it's 4 lanes instead of 2, and instead of no sidewalks or extended shoulders or things like that, it gets larger. But you had to start with an idea, period, of doing something.
What Gail is saying is after paying the fee to the consultant does their due diligence, looking at all factors within the 0 to 2% design range, then they come up with a number. If it's, let's pick a name and a number, Black Forest Road at 10 million, then they declare that they believe it's gonna be 10 million within a range of half of that, which is 5 million, to double 10 million to 20. So they're saying 10 million, but it could be 5 to 20. But we think it'll be 10.
I can do that.
Yeah, my math is just as fuzzy as mine. Richard.
I guess the biggest concern I have about this is the reading the write-up on page 49. Item number 1 is the one that bothers me. City staff would select the engineering firms to recommend to the PPRTA. One thing that I would not be, if I had any control, which I don't, would be that all firms would be excluded from being considered that have been involved in some of these overruns of estimates. And I would rather see that Rick and his staff be the one to administer this and select the consultants. That's my remark.
I'd like to clarify something, and Gail, you or Rick or somebody else chime in. If you look back over the list of projects and when we make a statement about a cost overrun, and you look back at all the projects of what they were originally estimated to be versus what they cost, there is a whole myriad of reasons of why those costs are different. There's been several in which take the Academy Boulevard or over Cottonwood Creek Bridge. Those cost estimates were done. Then the decision was made, instead of repairing the bridge, to replace the bridge. And then you add the cost of the Parks Department decided to run the bike trail under the bridge, which wasn't part of the original thing. So you go through a whole myriad of reasons. And so if you just look at a list and say, this project cost was overrun. Well, was that original cost estimate a 0% concept? Was it a 2% design? And so you, without knowing what percent design you started with when you made that cost estimate, it's hard to make a value judgment on why that project was over cost. It's just too many things if you just look at a list of numbers. And that's been my experience through this committee and being part of this thing. And so I just my point would be caution looking at a list and say it's overrun, therefore it was a bad estimate and we ought to fire the firm. Just my comment to that, Richard.
Rick, do you mind if I add on 2 items to that, just to, because I'm trying to keep track and respond to some of the things. And Jim, I greatly appreciate when you talk about what's really considered a cost overrun. Oh,
Any other further discussion?
yes,
Go
Jim,
ahead,
this is
Gail.
Gail. I apologize. So I just wanted to hit your item and then.
Sorry, I've got a delay in audio.
Okay, I'm going to try again. So
Go
Jimmy,
ahead,
you were
Gail.
having a delay in volume. It sounds like you weren't hearing what we said. I want to address a couple of things, and then it sounds like there's a couple other comments on there. But I greatly appreciate what you said about cost overruns. You know, a lot of times when you have change orders, we look at them and they get classified, or they should be classified in a couple different manners. There's owner requested changes, and what Jim was describing, there's a lot of things that are owner requested changes. We have regulatory changes. The Black Forest Road project example I gave earlier had a regulatory change that had resulted in a significant cost impact. There's unforeseen site conditions, and sometimes there's design errors. I will let you know if it's design errors or issues that are at fault of our consultants or contractors. Most often we require them to cover those costs. So when you see change orders, they typically, well, they aren't typically, they are all legitimate things that are usually driven by one of those first 3 categories that comes in for changes. So I just wanted to mention to you on that. Richard, the firms that would be selected, it's not that we'd be picking firms. All these firms that we would be recommending to the PPRT board have gone through an extensive statement of qualifications to be pre-identified by the city through our procurement process. And those are the firms that we've been forwarding on name-wise for further consideration for these cost estimates. And the way that we've been setting up, the level of detail and involvement they would have would not preclude them from being eligible for pursuing that work in the future. So just to keep up to where we're at, I don't know, since.
Jim, this is Ryan Bissiger. So I've been listening to discussion here, and I agree with Gail that this is absolutely standard practice for the industry, that we need to understand what these projects cost and do some level of design to get there, right? Whether that's taking and applying a cross section across the roadway, doing a profile, a plan and profile design. I'm not sure what what's being considered in the 2%, but that is absolutely needed for the agencies to understand what these projects are going to cost right now. Not that they're not going to change, and Gail went over the reasons why the costs do change, and they do. It's never going to be 100% where you're on the mark at your estimating phase to what's built in the ground. There's a change that happens, and that's just understood. But for us to be able to understand and constituents understand with a good level of confidence what the cost is going to be, I think that's a big deal for us to be able to do that and to be able to determine what can be delivered in that 10-year project list. You know, this, like I said, it's standard practice with every measure like ours that I've seen in other states. This is what is done. But that's what I had to share. Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, this is Tony Joy again. Can I?
Yeah,
just
go ahead,
make a
Tony.
comment? I understand that we need to get some estimates. My only problem was that we're telling people that, we're giving an estimate of what it's going to cost, but it really could cost if we say it's going to be 2, it could be anywhere from 1 to 4. 4 times, it's just a very wide window, I think, to give anybody any type of good feeling about what the cost is going to be. That's my main concern with spending the money up front here, to really be potentially nowhere near what the actual costs are. So if we're not going to be anywhere near it potentially anyway, why spend the money in the first place? That was my concern.
Jim, this is Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
One of my concerns, and it somewhat echoes what Tony's talking about, we're looking at potentially $1.5 trillion of stimulus going into the system. And we have seen what it has done to our collections. It has totally thrown all of our estimates off. I mean, we've updated our budget twice this year already because of additional income. Well, guess what? Additional costs are coming in also. And so we're going to spend $1 million and we're going to be off anyway. And we're going to be off by probably just as much, because we can't really guess what the real multiplier effect is going to be of $1.5 trillion, because it's not going to be delivered out there to the citizens of the United States at $6 a piece. There's going to be some places getting a lot of it and some places not getting much of it. And we may get either one. And supply and demand is going to be out of whack. And we know that supply is short on materials and everything else. And nobody seems to have a solution for that. And so we can go through the analysis process. In the end, we'll say, well, this is our best estimate. And it was really no better than the last estimate because there's too many uncontrollables.
Don't disagree.
Jim, I don't think there's any more
Okay.
questions. Nobody's
Okay,
got their
so
mics on.
I'll entertain a motion on
Gene?
the city. Go ahead, Gene.
Now, I move that we table this pending clarification from the board as to what their exact intent was. Either this money could be used to validate estimates that came in from the member governments, or whether it can be used for the initial cost estimates.
Do we have a recommendation on the floor?
I would second that. This is Tony.
And we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay. So all those in favor of tabling and Tony's or following Tony's amendment to table this until we get clear from the board, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, what I'm hearing is a motion carries to make a recommendation to the board to table this until after the discussion at the board and that we would discuss their intent of this concept when it was approved. Did I state that correctly?
Yes, sir, you did. From my point of view as the person who initiated the motion.
Thank you. Okay. Gail, thank you for your information. And we'll continue the discussion. All right, item 8D, PPRT matrix update. Gail, you guys want to cover this, or Rick, being you?
Jim, I've been volunteered to cover this today.
Okay,
Gail's
great.
doing it. This is really just a, no, this was really the intent of today is just to give you an update on what the board discussed as it relates to the matrix. They did discuss items 7, 13, 15, 16, 17. And their decisions are documented in the minutes as provided in your packet. There is one outstanding item, and it is the discussion on the maintenance of effort, which the intent is to discuss that next Wednesday. I can say from the city's perspective, we've lined up our budget manager to participate in those discussions, or at least be available for questions for the board once they continue that on. We do have the the CAC's recommendation on what to reset the base rate of 2019 for consideration is one of the topics. And since it's kind of a discussion on those previous items I mentioned, 7, 13, 15, 16, and 17, another discussion came up really related to this. And as we started talking about some of the greenhouse gas regulations that are being proposed in the state of Colorado, that staff work to further define what completely funded means. And completely funded is that ballot language. So I'm going to paraphrase, so Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but it says in the ballot that the PPRTA list, or those projects identified in the PPRTA A list, must be completely funded prior to moving to the B list. And so there's some thought is, if you've got, again, we've been talking about the CIP plan, and particularly as you're getting your later years in your capital programs. Again, I'm picking on Black Forest Road, that must be the project today. You know, that those construction dollars are really loaded in 3 years, and they're planned in those 3-year issues. If we issue a construction contract in the next couple months, we can show how it's going to be paid for, and those funds are going to be there to support that over the life cycle of the authorization. But anyway, there's further definition being defined, and staff is working on that right now. If you would like me to hit some of the specifics on the topics the board hit on those items where they made decisions, I'd be happy to elaborate upon those, or I'm sure Rick would as well.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Item 1 says that the board decision is to go with the November 22 election. Item 5 says they go with the staff recommendation, and that says November 21 or April 22.
Item number 5 is for, hold on, I can't really see it, so just a moment. There are some differences in these. This item number 5 is related to new members joining PPRT in advance of the November 22. So
that's for them to have elections?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd just like to make a comment. This is Tony. I know I'm talking a lot today. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tony.
I just want to say,
Sorry.
I really appreciate the way this whole thing is put together, the different colors and everything. It makes it a lot clearer. So thank you.
You're welcome. It was needed for everyone to stay organized, I think, with a lot of these topics.
This is Rick, just an update on the completely funded issue. Bev has prepared an excellent draft of that, and I've reviewed it. Andy Gunning's reviewed it. The next step of review is Jennifer Ivy. After we get her review, then it'll go to the staffs of the 5-member governments. And then if we get response back by the next monthly cycle, then we can put it on the CACNA board agendas.
Okay. A lot of work has gone to this. It's very confusing. And if you sit through the discussions at the board level and stuff, I commend Gail and Jennifer and all the staff that has kept this thing organized and moving. So thank you all.
Mostly Gail.
Rick, you wanna cover item 8 E, the greenhouse gas stuff, a couple of us went to the recent meeting by CDOT here, regional meeting, but you want to cover that?
Yes, Jim, I will do. As I mentioned to the CAC last month, September 24 was the local public hearing of CDOT on the greenhouse gas issue. It was the third of their 9 that they're holding around the state. And I've attached in the packet the talking points that PPRTA Board Chair Randy Helms read into the record at that hearing. The PPRTA attorney Jennifer Ivey has been very much in the details on this, and she's preparing an even more in-depth. It's about a 3-pager draft that she's preparing to present in the closed executive session next Wednesday, and then come out of executive session in an open session, ask the board to approve the 3-pager that'll then be submitted to CDOT by the rulemaking public comment deadline of Friday, October 15. So that's about all I know to share at this point, unless there's questions.
Okay, thank you.
I was at that meeting, and I have to praise anyone that helped put that document together that's presented by the chair, Mr. Helms. And I must say, he presented it in a very forceful, strong, articulate manner. And I think he represented PPRTA about as good as any human being could have done. And it was about, except for a little bit of what the head of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Government representative made. This was the only really good authoritarian statement that I heard, but it was just extremely well done, and everyone associated with it deserve our praise. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I was there as well, and Rick was there, and as you said, the good statements. Make sure you sell your gas car and get an electric one by 2025 if you're going to go north. So anyway, all right, very good. Thank you. Appointment and reappointment and item 8F, appointment, reappointment of CAC members. Rick?
This is my usual October, November memo each year. It's my template, and I just slot in the CAC members who are cycling out, whose either first term or second terms are expiring, because the CAC members are on staggered terms, as you're well aware. So Karen Asplin is CTAB first term. By the way, the member government CAC members, CTAB, HAC, Greenmount Falls, Manitou, and Rama, have terms but no term limits. There are term limits for the at-large alternates and at-large regulars that are appointed by the board. So Karen Asplin, Dave Zelnok, excuse me, need to seek reappointment. All terms on the page expire on 12/31 of 21. Reb, second full term, Greenmount Falls, again, a term ending, but there's no term limits for you, Reb, at Greenmount Falls. So Tom Viersba is an at-large regular and ending his second full term, not eligible for reappointment to be an at-large regular, but could be an at-large alternate. Jim Moore, first term, at-large alternate, needs to request reappointment. and Jim Godfrey as well. So then it would be helpful to have the reappointment letters for the at-large and at-large alternates to me by November 3. Are there any questions? So Jim Moore, I think my memo missed you, so I just want to make sure that you are aware that you need to request reappointment for a second term as an alternate.
Rick, I've been pouting about the omission for at least a week.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. Sorry to cause you stress.
No problem.
Hey, this is Dave Zollner. Just so I understand clearly then.
Go ahead, Dave.
To you folks or to the board that appoints me to the El Paso County Commissioners? Just so I'm clear.
It's the local process of each member government. So whatever the county process is, which can change from year to year, time to time. So I don't know if the HAC can make the reappointment or if the BOCC has to. Jeff
Okay.
Irvin, are you on? Can you help?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I believe the CAC makes a recommendation to our board, but Dave, I'll have Yana get in touch with you and let you know what that exact process is.
Thanks, Jan. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'd love to seek reappointment, Jan. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, any further questions or comments? Reach out to Rick if anybody's got any questions or comments or process otherwise. Thank you very much, Rick. Okay, let's move on. Also, item 8G is Rick's staff field report of his tours of all the work that's been submitted and that kind of thing, and his verification. So any questions with any of that, reach out to Rick.
Jim, this is Rick.
Yes, sir.
Can we go back to the prior item? I wanted to share with the CAC that we received a resignation of David Chestnut. So his seat is open now and potentially in next year. So that's an at-large regular seat that's now open. So that the board might decide to direct me to advertise, and then also alternates can apply to move up to an at-large regular seat. But I just want to announce that David Chestnut has submitted his resignation.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Rick, on that subject?
Jim, Gene, right?
Go ahead, Gene.
Rick, do you want to discuss me as well?
Totally up to you.
No, it's fine with me.
You have the floor.
Well, I have informed Rick and Jim that I would be stepping down from my position at the close of this meeting. It's being driven by health issues with my wife and a move to Texas in November that gets us closer to family and family support. Been a long time on the board. I can't say enough about the quality of work and the quality of people on the RTA. Rick, Beverly, and the whole staff are outstanding. Jim, your leadership has been superior. Thank you all.
Jim,
Thank you. Yes.
this is Joan.
Yes,
Jean,
Joan.
we're going to miss you very much. Thank you for what you brought to this group, and best wishes and Godspeed with your move.
Seconded.
Thank you.
We've got a good group of people here and we hate to lose good people. So best of luck, Gene, and best wishes to your wife's recovery.
Hello?
Yes.
Gene, I just wanted to say, there's a saying that I always live by from a song. that my pastor wrote. It's with the Lord in your heart, there's two in the saddle, and you'll never ride alone. To you and Jeannie both, God bless.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Thanks, Gene.
Gene,
Reb?
this is Reb. Thank you for all your service. It's been a long time together. And may the road in front of you be just as smooth as the road has been bumpy behind us.
Thank you, Reb. It's been a pleasure knowing all of you. We don't always agree, but that's the way life is. But we are all working towards a good common goal, and we've done a good job, in my opinion. Thank you all.
Thanks. Thank you, Gene. All right. Let's move on to item 8G. We already talked about that, the staff report. It's there, it's in your packet information. So item number 9, agenda topics for next meeting. Anybody got any burrs under their saddle that they want to bring up or talk about for next time?
We can put the update on federal infrastructure funding on there as a contingency.
Okay. Makes sense. Anybody else? Okay. If you come up with anything or think of anything, reach out to Rick and let him know. Anybody have any communications, item number 10, that they want to share with the group?
This is Dave Zelenak, if I may, please, just to back just a bit, the greenhouse gas issue. I'd love to have an update on that as well. It probably flows in somewhat with the infrastructure update, but I think the greenhouse gas one is one that really is worth keeping an eye on, because that can affect, of course, where our current and future funding can be spent or not.
Yes, good point, Dave. And we'll continue to follow that until we get something. I think, Rick, in the date October 13th, something which is like the day after the board meeting for public comments to be submitted to CDOT. Is that correct, Rick? Was the 13th the right date?
Friday, the 15th, and an excellent point, Dave Zelenak. I'll put in the CAC packet whatever the board makes as a final decision, the full narrative. You know, the 3-pager, particularly if it's that, I'll put that in your CAC packet next time.
Yeah, that'd be great. Also, just for what it's worth, I was on a different Zoom call earlier today with a senior CDOT official, and she was saying, interestingly enough, that they are hearing these kinds of comments loud and clearly. They have 2 more to go, she said. And interesting, there's a process that they're looking to, if I understood correctly, which I'm sure I don't 100% understand what the process is, but looking at bifurcating it somehow so they can move this forward on time and somehow I would call it throw a bone to the local officials. I just don't understand the process and the nuances of the legalities, but they are listening, I guess is the point. And whatever comes out as a result of the CDOT conclusion, I just encourage us to pay careful attention, not only to our local elected officials, but to this, I would call it lovingly, a scheme that CDOT's coming up to bifurcate the issue. So whatever that means, I don't know. So just FYI.
All right. Thanks for that update and additional information. Thank you. All right, folks. Anybody else have any issues or comments or that they'd like to bring up at this time? Speak now, forever hold your peace. All right. Well, thank you all for your time today. I appreciate it. And sorry I couldn't be there with you in person. But everybody have a great month, and we'll talk to you next month.
Have fun in Albuquerque. Have fun in Albuquerque, Jim. That balloon festival's a really amazing. So I've been there a few times.
This is the 5th year we as a group have been volunteering here. So we work the whole thing from start to finish, and you're right, it's a great event. We love it.
Are you gonna fly, Jim, or are you gonna keep your feet firmly? in
I
the-
actually got my first, Becky and I, my wife and I got our first balloon ride yesterday.
Good for you.
So it was awesome. One of the pilots, we working in propane where all the pilots and crew come in to refill the canisters. And we were just talking and somehow the it came up and I said, I've never been up. And he said, I'll fix that. And he took Becky and I up for a ride yesterday. We were up, I don't know, 45 minutes or close to an hour. Got up to about 7,800 feet and worked the Albuquerque box a couple of times and and landed in a lady's backyard, and it was wonderful. So yeah, another bucket list item checked off. The next bucket list in a balloon would be rise to 13,000 feet, and I'll skydive out of it. Yeah, that'll be the next one.
Okay, well, best of luck with that, Jim.
Yeah. Well, no, it was great. We love it here. We've got 12 of our motorhome, 12 rigs in our motorhome group here. And just like I said, this is the 5th year we've all worked it as a group. So it's fun. There's great people down here.
Yeah, I've got the jumps myself, so we should probably compare notes sometime before you go. So happy to share
All right.
my experience. Thanks. Hey, oh, and I got a call from already. Thanks, Jen.
All right. All right. Goodbye, guys. Everybody have a great day.